All right, so I decided to go in a little bit of a different direction in terms of pulling control pack wire through this Fox. And this is the first Coyote swap I have done in a Fox. And there isn't actually very many videos online that's showing you where to run the wiring from the control pack, how to get it to where it needs to be. Well, it's a new year and we are still working on Gerry's Coyote swapped hatch here, but we're really close. Like the fuel system is all run and hooked up. Fuel pressure regulator is installed. Well, it's not installed against the strut tower, but it is here. All that's hooked up. We did some custom welding and bracketry down here on the tubular lower radiator support to be able to accommodate not only just the radiator, but also the AC condenser. So that is all there, and got some flat steel here. Been working on some mock-ups for both oil cooling and transmission cooling. So still need to do a few things in terms of making sure that everything is going to fit in the front end without having to cut or hack or do any of those sorts of things. That's why I've actually got a mock-up bumper there, so I can kind of place it on and make sure that things are clearing the way that they should. Also got most of the AC system hooked up here. I keep forgetting my PAG oil, which I want to pour down this one line so that we can make sure that there's sufficient oil in the system, but everything else is run. What else? Heater core. So that will be getting hooked up. We've got some random hoses here. Got this crossover H as well, which Gerry said we need this. I'm not 100% sure, as this is my first Coyote swap. But getting into the electronics and the wiring / control pack. So the way that the harness is designed on the motor, the computer needs to be in this area or this region here, which I've come up with, I guess, a solution or a way that that's going to mount, and we'll still have an inner fender, try and keep things protected and away from the elements, and more importantly, be able to connect things without having to, extend a main harness like this. Because, if we pull this through, I'll show you guys. Here's the harness, and you don't really have many options or places to go. So the reality is we are going to send it over here. There are Scott rod panels to go in, so however we cut or open those up to be able to accommodate that wiring. But what I want to do right now is I want to try and run. So I had the fuse block mounted here, which I thought was kind of clever because kind of hid a little bit of this wiring and all that. But what it ends up doing is that some of these main connectors for like your OBD2, your ignition hookups, your drive-by-wire throttle pedal, all of these main wires end up only making it to about here. And we need them to be in the cabin and over there. So as cool as having the fuse block underneath the hood and accessible would have been, it's really just not that functional. So then I came up with the idea of, well, what if we stick it down in where the factory computer would be? And there you can see it is sitting in there pretty good. We're gonna have to modify the kick panel here to be able to accommodate that, but it will work. But in order for it to work, we need to get all of this wiring into the engine bay. Well, more specifically, up to the computer, right? And there's more than enough length, but it's how do you get a big connector like that all the way up here? Where do you pass it through? Like, that hole definitely isn't big enough. All right, so I decided to go in a little bit of a different direction in terms of pulling control pack wire through this Fox. And this is the first Coyote swap I have done in a Fox. And there isn't actually very many videos online that's showing you where to run the wiring from the control pack, how to get it to where it needs to be. You know, we've seen the end result. We've seen people terminating wires and saying, okay, yeah, this goes to start request, this goes to your fuel pump, this goes to key on 12-volt ignition. And aside from that, everything else is pretty much plug and play. Like, it's not difficult wiring when you have this fully integrated control pack. However, how to get it to the point of where it's all hooked up is something else. Now, the end result is that the best place for the computer itself is generally in this area, whether you have it in the inner fender well or you have it in here. So twin turbo car, they actually cut out this section here on the inside of the inner apron and recess the computer down so that it's kind of coming out through here. Now, that is still technically a possibility in this case. However, I really don't know. It might be cleaner because that way, you know, we'd have to cut through the Scott rod panel as well. I don't know. It's a toss-up right now because, you know, now I've run this wiring on the inside of the inner fender well here. I've run it all through this hole here that I've drilled out, which is kind of like the opposite of the driver's side because there is a smaller opening on that side for the cruise control, vacuum line, and factory harness. So in this case, I just kind of did, instead of the hole being horizontal, it's vertical, and I drilled it out to mimic the plug that would go here. Now, I could have pulled the harness out through here, possibly, you know, massage the hole a little bit, get my hand up in there. However, there is a lot going on in this corner between the accumulator for the AC, got our fuel pressure regulator, and everything else in here. So I was like, you know what? I feel like it'd be better to just hide the computer over here, get it out of the way. It'll be protected by the inner fender, and you know, you're not going to have plugs sitting out in the open here. And don't get me wrong, this harness, so this is the main engine harness, okay? That's going to have to go through, and then we have the transmission harness, which is here, and that guy's going to have to go through so that everything can plug in right here, okay? And you can see the engine harness is kind of stretched over a little bit. I've seen people say they've had to extend the throttle body harness here and make it a little bit longer. I think we'd be okay. And if we want to get more stretch out of this, or maybe if I want to kind of get this over here on the other side of the oil filler neck, then probably need to extend that. One thing for sure are the O2 sensors. So I do believe Gerry bought extenders. I don't know if the extenders are going to be long enough in this case for what we need, because since we're running the long tubes, the O2s are set back pretty far. So this harness, in reality, should probably be pulled out here because it'll get run from the inside down. So that's going to have to do some stuff sort of like that. All right. Now, as mentioned before, I wanted to get the fuse block down in here, and it kind of makes all the wiring make sense because it allows me to run the connector over to the throttle pedal for the drive-by-wire connector. You can have your OBD2 plug and check engine light routed all the way over to the driver's side, you know, as an OBD2 port would be on any newer vehicle, typically somewhere near that driver's side kick panel, underneath the steering column somewhere. And then we have our pigtail with the wires for our 12-volt ignition, start request, all those other things. And of course, the big long green wire there, which is ultimately going to run down to the fuel pump. So I like this setup. And I'm saying that now, everything isn't fully connected and finished yet, so don't hold me to it. You know, versus the twin turbo Coyote, that fuse block is actually sitting here, right? So they've sort of gone the other direction, which that car being a T56 setup, the transmission harness isn't part of the equation, right? So it would have just really been the O2 sensors and everything else without this, you know, plug that's going all the way down into the transmission itself. So this being the 10R80 setup, harness is going to be a little bit different in terms of control pack, and maybe that's why the design, or the other one, the fuse box and relay box, ended up there. You know, it is kind of nice to have it in the engine bay. There's a lot of vehicles, the fuse box and main relays and all that stuff are underneath the hood, but we're trying to keep things as clean as we can in here. And again, with the Scott Rod panels and everything else, it just kind of makes sense that we try and do it this way. So again, first time me doing it. I have done my research of what I could find online, and, you know, kind of struggled. So that's why I'm trying to share with you guys some of these obstacles and everything else that, you know, I've been going through. So there's that. In this case, we went to the tubular lower radiator support and had to weld on some brackets for the AC condenser, and now fab up the bracketry and everything that's needed for the oil cooler, transmission cooler. But we're getting there. This is actually, it looks like it's really, really far away, when in reality it's actually really, really close to being able to be in a position to fire up and start cleaning and buttoning things up. Once all those coolers are connected, and now I pretty much just have to finish hooking up some wires, we're actually going to be in really good shape here. So stick around. Lots more to come. Hopefully we'll be firing up this car real soon.